This is Reaganism, a podcast dedicated to exploring where the Reagan movement lives today. I'm Roger Zakheim, your host, director of the Ronald Reagan Institute in Washington, D.C.
On this episode of Reaganism, Roger sits down with Congressman Carlos Giménez, who represents Florida's 28th district in the U.S. House of Representatives. They discuss his origins as a firefighter in South Florida, his pathway to public service in Congress, and how the U.S. House is approaching the most pressing national security and foreign affairs challenges facing Americans today.
Congressman Carlos Giménez, welcome to Reaganism.
Well, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure being here.
Well, you are the representative from Florida's 28th congressional district, which encompasses Monroe County and parts of Miami-Dade County, former mayor there. In the Congress, you serve on the Homeland Security Committee, the House Armed Services Committee, and the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party. Quite busy there in Washington, and you began your career as a firefighter. I'm going to start with that one and then move to your current job, and we'll pass on the obvious joke of firefighting being the nexus between the two. But tell me about life as a firefighter and kind of how you came to that form of public service.
When people ask me what I am at my base, I'm a firefighter. That's what I am. That's my life. From what the IFF says, I am the first career firefighter ever elected to Congress. Now, there's been a bunch that maybe have had a year or two in the fire department or have been a volunteer firefighter, but I'm the first one that's actually gone an entire career in the fire service and then went on to Congress. So I started as a firefighter when I was 20 years old. Back in 1975, and then I retired in the year 2000. I ended up being the fire chief of the city of Miami, which led me to become the city manager of the city of Miami, which led me to become a commissioner for Miami-Dade County, which led me to become the mayor of Miami-Dade County, which has led me here. I still haven't figured out what I want to do in life, so just keep going on and on, but.
Well, keep on searching. You're doing great things as you go. So it's obviously the right methodology.
Well, I took that, there was a Nextel commercial, way back, if firefighters ran the world. Well, I took that to heart, I guess, to run for mayor and then Congress. And, we have a way of doing it. Do we want clean water? Yeah, we want clean water. Do you want a safe world? Yeah, we want a safe world. Yeah, it's pretty easy. It's not hard. Yeah, of course we want that stuff. Okay.
Everything I need to know to lead in Washington, I learned as a firefighter. As a firefighter in Florida, in Miami, you obviously engaged with elected officials, even Ronald Reagan, I understand. And of course, you also come from the Cuban American community in Miami, both as a Cuban American and as a firefighter. What were you hearing from elected officials during that stage in your life that kind of either gave you insight of what not to do or what you should do given the needs of your community?
Look, most of my mentors are actually from the fire service, and the Miami Fire Department has a way of building and making leaders, creating leaders. I'm a mayor, I'm a congressman, Miami Fire. There are a number of Miami firefighters that have ended up being chiefs at different departments. There are a number of Miami firefighters who have been managers in different cities, which is not usual. There's something about the department and the culture of that department that kind of bred do it the right way, excellence. You're the best. We're the best. And the City of Miami Fire Department was a Class 1 fire department, and we were always striving to be the best and do things the right way. And so that kind of, molded my early life, as a young man. And I was 20 years old when I joined and all that. And so on the political side, I got more involved. The higher ranks I got more involved with some of the politicians, but I really didn't get involved until I was fire chief, which was in 1991. I was 37 years old, and the manager appointed me the fire chief of this. This is a large metropolitan department of 750, 800 people. And at 37 years old, I'm like, hey, what am I going to do now? I'm 37. I've already reached the pinnacle of my career. And then, I started dealing with some politicians. Politicians are regular people. Some of them are very smart. Some are not so smart. Some of them are trying to do the right thing, and some maybe not be trying to do right by themselves. And so, the things that I learned as a firefighter, and the thing that I have on my, there's a cup that I always had in front of my desk, which was service above self. And so I took that, to heart. I'm a public servant. I'm here to serve the people. I'm not here to serve my own interests. That's what I took. Okay, that's what I took out of it. Okay, and so here in Congress and everywhere I've ever served, it's about serving and doing the right thing. But whatever position that I hold, to do the right thing. The decisions I make aren't based on what's best for Carlos Giménez. It's best what I think is best for the community, for the country, whatever position, the department, the city, depending on the position that I hold.
Refreshing words to hear, ones that I hope are echoing through the corridor behind you there in the House office buildings. Well, there's no shortage of challenges that you're facing, particularly in your roles on the various committees I mentioned earlier. One before you now is how the United States and how the Congress will choose to address, one, support for Israel and a pending supplemental bill, two, support for Ukraine and that same pending legislation, and grouped together is policies that should address the border crisis. And you're really in the heart of all of that, and didn't mention also funding to deal and support with Taiwan. Yeah. What is the kind of approach you're advocating right now? There's reports that people are thinking about breaking that one measure up and trying to deal with these issues individually. Give me your take, Congressman Giménez, and the prospects of any of this being addressed.
Look, I think all those issues should be addressed. I think I'm in favor of funding for Israel. That's our ally in the Middle East. It's the only democratic country there in the Middle East that upholds our principles, and we should be the best of allies, and we should help Israel in its struggle. You got surrounded by a group of people that want to destroy it and kill the Jewish people. We have to help Israel. Look, being Cuban, I have no love for the Russian army or Putin. It was Russian help and assistance that has allowed the Cuban regime to oppress my people in Cuba. So I'm no fan of Russia. And I also am a fan of the Ukraine and Ukrainian people that are fighting, this superpower and keeping them at bay. And we're not there fighting with them. They're just saying, hey, give us the tools, give us the assistance, and let us fight, but we need the assistance. So I'm sympathetic to the Ukrainian people and their cause against, the Russian aggression on two fronts. Number one, it's a blatant form of aggression, and Putin just thought he could go there, walk in, and just take over Ukraine. But two, if he was successful at that, then what kind of message does it send to China? And then now we're back to Taiwan, right? And that, Taiwan now is susceptible to this. And if we don't continue to fund or help the Ukrainians and we stop it, then what does that say about the United States and its willingness to stand up with its allies? And I think it will cause irreparable harm to our reputation. I think our reputation is tarnished already, under the Biden administration. But if you stop and you cut and you run away from Ukraine, where all they're asking for is 5% of our defense budget, and they're not asking us to shed our blood, they're asking just to protect themselves, and we cut and run, I don't think that's a really good message that we're sending to the rest of the world. So I have a problem there. Now let's go on to the border. The border is a mess because Joe Biden made it a mess. The border is a mess because Joe Biden and his hired hand, which is Alejandro Mayorkas, purposely have made the border a mess. I'm not sure even if we get with an agreement with them, we pass some law, all comprehensive, that we give aid to Ukraine and to Israel, and that we step up our aid to Taiwan so they can defend themselves against Chinese Communist Party, that Joe Biden will ever follow through on his pledge on the border. I think this is on purpose. The reasons are unclear to me, but nobody can be that dumb. Mayorkas certainly isn't that dumb. Biden even himself isn't that dumb. They've done this on purpose. for a reason, and it'll all come to light of why they're doing it. So I have no faith in that the president will actually follow through on any commitment he makes to secure the border. So let's see what happens in the Senate. But those are my thoughts on those four subjects. They're bundled together? Yes. Should they be bundled together? Probably not. We're probably bundling them to see if we can get something on the border. But even if we do, what actually do we get from the border? The only way to fix the border is a new president, a Republican president, somebody that will follow the law, somebody that will actually, fulfill their oath to the office. And unfortunately, that's not what we have in the Oval Office, and unfortunately, that's not what we have as the Secretary of Homeland Security.
Definitely pouring cold water on any prospect that we can get a deal here. Seems like the trust deficit is grave in your mind, and the expectation that President Biden, even if a law were to be passed and enacted, your view is one that the issue will not be addressed by President Biden. Of course, President Trump has said that no deal should go through before the election, which seems to me to reinforce that issue is going to have to be sidelined if you want to deal with some of the other issues you've raised. We discussed Israel, for example, supporting their fight against Hamas, and Ukraine supporting their fight against Russian aggression. What is your take? You're obviously someone who's ear to the ground, realistic, knows what it takes to get things done. Could you see the funding for Israel and the funding for Ukraine go through without a border bill as a companion?
I think the only way that happens is I don't think it goes through with a majority Republican. I think there will be a number of Republicans that will, but we're going to need the Democrat support. That kind of a situation needs bipartisanship. That's not going to be one side or the other. Both sides are going to have to come together. The people are kind of like in the middle to get that done in that fashion. So I think that the only way that can happen is through a suspension, and then you're going to need 2/3. There are a number of colleagues of mine that they have to have the border. Look, I want the border too. I'm just a little bit more realistic that no matter what you pass, and then you say, hey, look, we got it done. It's not going to change anything. They're not going to. The situation on the border is not going to get improved. This president has proven time and time again he doesn't care what the law is, and so whoever thinks that somehow we have this deal and they're going to come through, I just don't see it happen. And so I'm a little bit more pessimistic than some of my colleagues are. And then we need to start telling the people the truth that Congress only has a certain amount of power, and that we write the laws and all that, but the Supreme Court is saying, well, if the administration doesn't follow the law, et cetera, your recourse is to impeach people. Which by the way, I disagree with that assessment. I think the Supreme Court was actually set up by our founding fathers to be the arbiter between the administration and the legislative branch. Not that somehow, well, that's it. Well, they're not following law. Okay, you guys, over there in Congress, you got to deal with it. I don't think that's what the founding fathers, had in mind when they passed the separation of powers.
And that's, of course, referring to compliance with the law as it relates to immigration and to what extent the federal government is or is not, and some governors taking their own action, as I think you're referencing with respect to the border and what action the federal government could or could not take. You were referencing a moment ago, Congressman Giménez, about the opportunity to address the Israel funding and the Ukraine funding, that you need some sort of parliamentary procedure, which is known as suspension of the rules, which would require 2/3 vote of members, and therefore it has a privileged ability to get the vote, as opposed to the sort of thing that could be hunkered down with amendments and otherwise kind of the process. And so that's why it requires that level of vote. But of course, the nuance there, which is not a nuance for the speaker, is that, of course, to do that, the speaker would rely on Democratic votes. We've seen that on a couple of occasions. We are currently not in a government shutdown, at least until March, because the Speaker of the House recognized that to get that measure through, it required Republican and Democratic votes. And even if it meant that there weren't a majority of Republicans in support of it. Do you think the Speaker and the Republican conference would tolerate another vote, a consequential one, as you've eloquently laid out, with respect to Ukraine funding, Israel funding, on a suspension of the rules, and a vote that may end up having a majority of Republicans or even a slightly less than majority of Republicans behind it? It's got to be a tough call for the Speaker of the House.
Well, look, we're divided in the Republican conference about funding for Ukraine. That's for sure. Okay, and any funding for Ukraine has to be tied to the border. I'm just being a little bit more realistic, and somehow that some of my colleagues are saying, "Oh, we've got to have this border thing. We have to have this border thing." At the end, okay, you get the border thing and you get funding for Ukraine. What's going to happen at the border? I'm really pessimistic that anything else happens. So my messaging is, the only way you want to secure, the only way, sure way to secure the border is to have a Republican president in 2025. And by the way, it kind of hurts, if somehow we can fix it here in Congress, then do we really need a Republican president? Yeah, we need a Republican president. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the only way that you can ensure that the border will come under control, if we have a Republican president. And all you got to do is look at what's happening right now. Look, the laws haven't changed at all. We haven't changed anything. We passed HR 2. It's sitting over in the Senate. Yeah, it's a great comprehensive bill. It mandates certain things, but the law hasn't changed at all. From January 19th to January 21st of 2021, the law didn't change. Right? The administration changed, and you had control of the border on January 19th, and then you had chaos on January 21st. There wasn't any additional funding. There wasn't any less funding on 21st and on the 19th. It is all this administration and what they want to do. And the administration has incredible power. And I think that Congress has given away way too much power to the administration to do too much leeway. And so Joe Biden thinks he has the leeway to do what he's doing under the current law, just like President Trump thought he had the leeway to do what he did under the current law too. So, I'm a little bit more pessimistic here. I'm more of a doer. I'm not a legislator. I'm a mayor, right? I mean, I'm an administrator and all. And I don't like just to talk and then, hey, that's it. The law's done. So the problem is solved. Well, we got a bunch of laws and we have a bunch of problems. So something's not working here. You actually got to get down and start working at it.
Well, there's no doubt that when it comes to border enforcement, that's really in the domain of the executive branch. And as you point out, you have two wildly different interpretations of the law and what it requires. And as you see that, the different policy and policy outcomes with respect to the border between President Trump and President Biden. One of the things that is within the domain of the Congress, and it's Article 1 squarely, is raising support armies, and of course, declaration of war and providing use of force to the president. That is, the president has the commander-in-chief authority, but of course it's for the Congress to determine what is and is not lawful with respect to use of force. And of course, here I'm talking about the unbelievable increase in attacks on U.S. forward deployed forces in Syria and Iraq, and most recently in Jordan. President of the United States could respond to his own commander-in-chief authority in terms of self-defense, but there is increasingly a need that simply responding in defense fashion seems to be inviting more attacks. We need to restore deterrence. Congressman, do you think the Congress needs to do more to demonstrate to the President of the United States and to the world? And in this case, I'm really referring to Iran and the IRGC, Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. They're backed militias and forces that the United States is and will target anyone who attacks U.S. forward deployed forces. Where's the Congress in this conversation?
I think the Republican side, our side for sure, okay, is that we want, more strict act. Look, President of the United States, President Biden has been at the wrong side of history for the last 40 years, when he was a senator, when he was a vice president, now as president. I mean, what makes anybody think that somehow he becomes president and all of a sudden he's going to be on the right side? He's been on the wrong side, and so he's created weakness. He is an appeaser, has been all his life. And so, because he wants to negotiate, and he wants to negotiate with really bad people that want to destroy us. You don't negotiate with people like that. The only thing they understand is force. And so, no, when he became president, I told some of my colleagues, look, I think, frankly, and I hope I'm wrong, but I think that we're going to be involved in a major conflict, or the world's going to be involved in a major conflict within 2 years, okay, of him becoming president, because he's going to demonstrate weakness, and our enemies are going to take advantage of that. And sure enough, that's what they did in Ukraine. Look what they decided. But sure enough, that's what they're doing in Israel. And sure enough, now they're taking action against us. Why? Well, because the president decided to lift a lot of the sanctions that President Trump had put on Iran to try to strangle them economically. Now they got more money. They have 500% more income from their oil than they did under the Trump administration. The Biden administration cuts deals for billions and billions of dollars in exchange for prisoners and stuff. Allows $10 billion to be shipped from Iraq to Iran for energy, for God's sakes, and gives a waiver for that. And so all of that money is not used for the benefit of the Iranian people. It's used to destroy Israel and the United States. And so I don't get what the president doesn't get, or Blinken, what he doesn't get. All right. And so, yeah, I want to see stronger response from the United States of America. Don't go bombing some, depot in the middle of the desert where there's nobody there. Okay. No, start hitting some of their assets where it really hurts them. The assets, start imposing more sanctions on their oil, start reimposing stricter sanctions on them economically, and at the same time, go ahead and then go ahead and strike those things that we know are dear to Iran and its allies. Those targets, it's a target-rich environment. Pick some and let's go. We got to demonstrate to them that we're serious. And if you ramp it up, believe me, we're going to ramp it up even more. So either stop it, or this is going to get worse.
So, need for escalation in terms of the U.S. side to respond in kind and ultimately to restore that deterrence. Clearly, you're talking about strike packages in places where it'll have a consequential impact on Iran's calculus. These are Iranian-backed groups, IRGC-backed groups. Do you anticipate that there'll be a push from Republicans to get the House of Representatives to adopt some sort of resolution calling for some of this activity? The President of the United States, President Biden, has said that at his time of choosing, he will do so, pick those targets. You don't seem convinced by it, both by your response to that point and what you said earlier. And then, so we'll get your reaction to that. And more broadly, beyond the strikes, I think what some of your comments are getting at is that we haven't really seen a change in the Biden administration's policy towards Iran. Of course, as you noted, they started out seeking to restore the deal, the JCPOA, that of course the Trump administration reversed. It was restoring what the Obama administration had in place. Well, of course, that's not being pursued, mostly because Iran has chosen not to. It seems to be you're calling for, we need to have a significant change in our Iran policy come from the executive branch, and not much optimism from your part that we'll see that.
Well, look, when I was younger, and I got a management lesson, and the management lesson said there's a thing called the hot stove rule. And the hot stove rule says that when somebody does something bad, all right, things happen right away. They don't happen at my choosing, because then there's no nexus between what was done incorrectly and the reaction. And so when you stick your hand on a hot stove, your reaction is right away, right? And so you stuck your hand in a hot stove and you got burned, right? It's not you stuck your hand in a hot stove and 10 years later you get burned, all right? You get burned right away. And so this whole thing of his time in choosing, I just don't I don't believe anything that this president said. I watch what he does. That's the difference between him and President Trump. I may not agree with or like everything that President Trump says, but I kind of like everything he does. All right. And to me, that's a lot more important. President Biden doesn't say some of the things, and people, gee, he said this and I like what he said. I just don't like anything he does. Everything he does looks to me like it's contrary to American interests and our self-interest and protecting the American people. And obviously, unfortunately, now we have some, American, soldiers that have lost their lives because of the inaction, because he's inviting this. So I put this squarely on President Biden, and now to say that, hey, we're going to react when we want to react. Let's see, let's see when and what he does. Because remember, when they announced, hey, we took these strikes and we did this and this to show them that we're serious. And well, what was it? What was it that you hit? Oh yeah, we hope some depots, some ammunition depots and stuff like that. Hey, come on, man.
Well, it's certainly
they are laughing at us, all right, and rightly so. You've got to be serious about this, and I just don't understand what he doesn't understand. It's pretty simple stuff that he doesn't get, and it's almost as if he's working against American interests. And I hate to say that, but it's almost as if he's working.
Well, certainly, it's hard to argue against that. Deterrence has degraded under President Biden's watch for all the regions that you've cited and the examples you're pointing to. Nobody wants to see American lives lost. Certainly, a president of the United States, commander in chief. But obviously, if the policy is wrong and it's not being applied appropriately, that's the risk, and we're seeing that play out right now. One area, and we'll talk about this before we move to our lightning round and conclude the conversation with Congressman Carlos Giménez of Florida, is Biden administration came in really in a form of continuity, saying that China was the pacing threat for the United States, just as President Trump did. And when he was in office, you, of course, sit on the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party. Really unique position to be in, bipartisan in terms of Republicans and Democrats, not just a name. Every committee has Republicans and Democrats, but really there's a common purpose here, common understanding of the problem set. Take a minute to talk about this committee, what your experience has been on the committee, and what we can expect from the Select Committee in the year ahead.
It's a great committee, and it's a bipartisan committee. It was set up by former Speaker Kevin McCarthy and Hakeem Jeffries in a bipartisan fashion. Everybody on the committee understands that China is the existential threat to the United States now and in the future. Understand what the Chinese Communist Party is all about, what they're doing, and that they're not our friends, and that, while we may have a disagreement on the need to decouple from them, I believe we need to decouple from China, because every dollar that we send to China and the Communist Chinese Party is going to be used against us, just like it is being used, in Iran. Now, let's go back to what President Biden said. He said all the right things, but what's he doing? Remember, again, watch what he's doing, right? So what's he doing? Well, he's trying to destroy American energy and replace it with energy that the Chinese are actually dominant in, which is solar panels, wind farms, etc. That's something that the Chinese are building and making and manufacturing and sending around the world. Now, mind you, they're not using it, because China opens up a new coal-fired electricity plant, one new one every single week. They are by far the world's greatest polluter by a factor of 2. And recently, the Biden administration did something else. They stopped all the permits for new, natural gas,
LNG,
facilities. And so, the best way, if he was really serious, the best way to actually reduce greenhouse gases in the world is by replacing Chinese coal-fired electrical plants with clean American natural gas, and you'd reduce the emissions by 50%. And so he's not serious. He's aiding the Chinese cause. He's aiding the Russians in their ability to generate income in order to perpetuate the war in Ukraine by destroying our energy. And so we continue to build up this deficit. We can be energy dominant. We can be supplying our allies in the world with clean American energy, and our president is destroying our industry. For what purpose? For what?
Yeah.
I don't understand, unless you're actively working against American industry. Remember, he says the right things. doesn't do the right things. He said,
no doubt, and energy policy is going to be a huge debate in the 2024 election. The Biden administration, as the congressman's referencing, of course, is now canceling or not allowing for new permits for LNG. The Biden administration would claim that the U.S. is kind of doubled its production, and so some sort of government managing of the market. But clearly, the point you make, Congressman, is that this is something right now that's going to make it easier for China to continue to carry out its policies, which, as you note, they are the biggest polluters with their coal production, and notably also treated like a emerging country, emerging market when it comes to being graded as a polluter. What are some of the things that the select committee is going to be looking at? I guess we're looking at energy. Anything else that you think in terms of focusing on the Chinese Communist Party? Of course, we have a new president elected in Taiwan. So the security situation in the Straits requires close watch and U.S. presence and a focus for U.S. intelligence assets. No doubt the select committee has been very focused on Taiwan.
Well, we are, but we also, look, what are we going to be focusing on China trade policies and how we can combat, the China trade policy, how we combat their the policy that they use in order to monopolize whatever it is they're going after, and how they undercut our companies or undercut companies from around the world so they can become dominant in a certain area. And so those policies that how do we combat that? How do we combat their influence with social media like TikTok? Where an American teenager, when they search for something, they're given this is what they get. A child or teenager, when he has the same search, they're led to a completely different place. And so how they're eating away at us using that platform and other platforms. And so, what are they doing in the South China Sea? What are they doing to Taiwan? What are they doing in the Philippines? All of those things. Those are things that we're looking at. We have been looking at the race for artificial intelligence. Where are they? Where are we? Their race for military dominance. They want to be the dominant military power by the year 2049. They want to be the dominant economic power by the year 2049. And, they have some issues themselves. They have some things, some hurdles that are not easy for them to clear. But we can't be in a position to try to help China become the dominant economic and military power of the world, because I don't want my children or my grandchildren living in a world dominated by the Communist Chinese Party.
Important mandate. There's a suite of issues that certainly all seem vital for the attention of the select committee's oversight and your work. Let's go to our lightning round. Here's where we ask all our guests to share their favorite Reagan speech, book, and quote. Congressman, will take all three, two, or just one. What do you have to share?
Well, my favorite book is An American Life, his own autobiography. Who better to tell the tale of Ronald Reagan than Ronald Reagan, right? My favorite speech is obviously, tear down this wall. That where his own people are saying, no, you can't say that. No, you can't say that. And he said, no, I'm going to say it. And he said it. And that's the speech everybody remembered. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall, and it led to the collapse of the Soviet Union and the Soviet Empire. Favorite quote is, "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction." We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. And I'm afraid, I would hope that the next generation takes that to heart, and that freedom is not free. Freedom has to be fought for, and then finally, democracy is worth dying for, because it's the most deeply honorable form of government ever devised by man. And so, look, he was the greatest president of my lifetime. Man, we could use a Ronald Reagan. And
Congressman, great quotes, like the closing, given the challenges we face today at home, the focus on democracy and freedom. Continue doing your good work We'd love to have you back. Thank you so much.
Anytime. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Reaganism. New episodes premiere weekly every Monday on YouTube and all podcast streaming platforms. If you like this episode, be sure to let us know and share with a friend.